Welcome, ladies and gents. Brendan Fraser is experiencing a bit of a renaissance in Hollywood and couldn't happen to a nicer chap. One of the films that he's being lauded for and praised for is The Whale. This received like an 8-minute standing ovation when it premiered. I believe it was at Venice. It's done very, very well, right? This is, by all intents and purposes, a fantastic film. It's what we would consider to be Oscar bait. It is kind of one of those films, right? There's no issue with that. Fine, whatever, cool. However, unfortunately, some certain individuals are apparently triggered by the fact that The Whale, can be seen as showing fat people in a light where I guess the accountability of them being fat is upon themselves. Now, I mean, this is nothing new, Unfortunately and tragically, people's relationship with food can be incredibly negative, and yes, people can eat themselves into a hole because they don't have any other coping mechanisms, and that is truly tragic. It genuinely is. I don't think anyone, wants to be at such a weight where they can barely walk up a flight of stairs without being out of breath and their knees hurting. And this is not a bit, this is not a joke. I genuinely have quite a large amount of sympathy for individuals like that. And, a film showing putting a spotlight on this type of consequence, coping mechanisms leading to obesity, can be seen as a hugely good thing. However, this film critic for the Rolling Stone, her name is Rife, says no one should see The Whale, fat or skinny people, because she's personally triggered by it, and the sense of accountability to one's actions don't resonate with her. It reinforces the notion that fat people have brought their suffering upon themselves through lack of coping skills. But unfortunately and tragically, that can be the case. Now, it's not to say that the coping skills or lack thereof is their fault. I was a teacher previous to making these videos online, bizarrely enough. I know, what a career change. But this is something I do actually have, some level of academia in, the psychology behind people's, essential body composition. So when it comes to this, your relationship with food is shaped through multiple factors, but two very key ones is your childhood and your general sense of self and being, but then also the adults around you, parental eating habits. Now, all too often you'll walk down an aisle in a shopping centre, shopping mall, wherever, or even just wherever there are general children, and you'll hear parents, and you, if you are a parent yourself, would have more than likely said to your kid, if you do this, I'll let you have this X, Y, and Z food as a treat. Now, this is a real negative reinforcement for eating habits. It enforces an incredibly bad relationship with food. Food can be seen as a treat. So when you feel bad or you feel hard done by the world, people turn to food as comfort. It reinforces this pretty negative relationship with food, whereas food is a fuel, it's a source, to go about your day, to do your things. There's a scientific mechanism by which nutrients can be combined to slow glycemic load, also gastric emptying. There's many factors at play here, but undoubtedly, unequivocally, yes, lack of coping skills can be a reason why fat people are fat. And it's tragic, it truly is. But to say that this film shouldn't exist simply as a result of that, highlighting that fact, or that people shouldn't watch it because, they may actually have a light shone on them. Again, God help the fact that some may actually see this as a positive enforcement to change themselves. Yeah, no, we can't have that. So let's dive into this, because it is total nonsense. According to Rolling Stone film critic Katie Rife, audiences of all body shapes and sizes should avoid seeing Brendan Fraser's return to the silver screen, The Whale, because it reinforces the notion that fat people are objects of pity who have brought their suffering upon themselves through lack of coping skills. Would you rather people look at individuals that are fat and have brought this upon themselves through lack of coping skills with pity, or would you rather them look at them with disgust and distaste? I mean, you know, you don't necessarily have to pity people, but you can also look at people from a respect of, well, these individuals just need a helping hand. And there's nothing wrong with that either. So directed by Darren Aronofsky, the film creator behind such esoteric and surrealistic psychological thrillers as Pi and Black Swan, adapted from the play of the same name by Samuel D. Hunter, The Whale, follows the struggles of Charlie, so Brendan Fraser, a 600-pound man who, after years of shutting himself inside and binge eating to cope with his guilt over leaving his family for his late mistress attempts to turn his life around. He abandoned his family because of his late mistress attempts to turn his life around, starting by reconnecting with his now 17-year-old daughter, Ellie. I mean, these are very real scenarios that can happen, not necessarily, you know, a late mistress, etc., but individuals shutting themselves in and binge eating. And then going, crap, I need to sort my life out. These can occur. Making its debut at Venice Film Festival, Aronofsky's latest film has found a generally favourable reception amongst critics, as seen in both its taking home with the aforementioned events Premio Cinema Sara, and basically a whole bunch of awards, and a 77% fresh and 64% Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic. So it's doing reasonably well. But here we have a complete Twitter meltdown from Katie Rife. I cannot recommend in good conscience that fat people watch The Whale. I can't recommend that skinny people watch it either, since it reinforces the notion that fat people are objects of pity who have brought their suffering upon themselves through lack of coping skills. Massive red flags for eating disorders and fatphobia. The main character endures over an hour of the cruelest verbal abuse imaginable and later tries to commit suicide by food. I've dealt with bulimia and binge eating disorders on and off for years and found it incredibly triggering. But this is and can be everyday life. To hide from that is no. You can tell that no, actually, fat peoples were involved, that's terrible English, in the production because of a major plot point where the protagonist is dying but refuses to go to the hospital even though he has money to pay the bills. The movie treats this as a combination of selflessness and suicidality, never considering the very obvious reason why a 650-pound person would avoid doctors. And here we have the most incredible shit-stained big brain take I've ever heard. It's called medical fatphobia, you absolute pricks. But this is probably the individual that would say, you know, when a medical doctor says, look, we can't treat you, we can't, you know, we can't do surgery on you because you're too big, you need to lose some weight. They would probably call that medical fatphobia. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as medical fatphobia. No one in medicine is afraid of is afraid of a fat person. Okay, let's just don't be so ludicrous. Please excuse the typos. I'm really feeling like shit after that viewing experience. This is someone quite literally hiding away from. Again, I mean, this is almost a visual representation of what the film is trying to tell. That yes, people do have bad coping mechanisms. This individual has probably suffered. I mean, has literally said, you know, bulimia, etc. Where was it? Bulimia and binge eating disorders on and off for years. This is what this individual has had: bulimia and binge eating disorders. And that is a coping mechanism, and then lo and behold, she reveals she has terrible coping mechanisms by saying, I'm feeling like shit after that viewing experience. So you took to Twitter to rant about it, and you'll probably shut yourself away and more than likely binge eat, thus proving that the film had a basis for being. There's a scene where the main character drops a key and can't pick it up, and people were laughing. Yes, that does happen. And yes, Brendan Fraser is very good, and most of the humanity, sensitivity, sympathy in the movie comes from his performance. That's the point. Ludicrous. Absolute ludicrous. You know, this is a film which I would say requires, you know, not requires to be, but has a place in being made. I think few films. We live in such a weird world where anything negative is now to be praised. Body positivity is to be praised. You know, you can't be negative towards fat people in any way, shape or form. And even this film, this isn't negative. This is putting a spotlight on one of the reasons why individuals turn to binge eating. And I think this, for all intents and purposes, handles it with some level of realism and grace, and sympathy for people afflicted with eating disorders, because that's what it is. But to simply run and hide from that, I mean, you are just you are becoming the very reason why the film exists in the first place. So I think this is a shame, all films like this. No, can't do that. No, not good. Can't do that. We just must sanitize it all. Bizarre. Next we'll have incredibly obese superheroes to say that body positivity is all fine and dandy. So, yeah, okay, your arteries aren't going to thank you though.